I was sentenced to life in prison for, quote unquote, having a long tongue against the king, seeking to change the society structure, bad mouthing official entities, and writing for Israeli newspapers. Many people like me who support peace and support Israel ended up in the same position in Jordan. And this is very strange. The king meets openly and acknowledges that he meets regularly with Muslim Brotherhood leaders. He meets with Hamas leaders. He meets with them openly. Why? Why does he go after people like me if he is so peaceful? So I think the answer is very clear. He's not peaceful at all.
The Middle East is changing in real time. My guest today is Mudar Zahran. Born in Jordan to a Palestinian family, Mudar has become one of the most controversial voices in the region. He has spent years criticizing Hamas, the Palestinian leadership, Arab governments, and the Jordanian monarchy itself. In our last interview, he argued that many of the assumptions people hold about Palestinians, Israel, Jordan, and the wider Middle East are simply wrong. Today, we're going deeper. Who really failed the Palestinians? What are Arab leaders saying behind closed doors? What happens after Hamas? Is Jordan the next major crisis? And where is the Middle East heading from here? Mudar, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
I want to get your assessment of what is going on right now between the U.S. and Iran. It's been a while since we last spoke.
The fact is, most people, most commentators either have an agenda or they simply don't know what they're talking about. Some, like John Bolton and others, warmongers, they want the total war, annihilation of Iran. Some don't even know what's happening and they claim Trump is weak. In fact, Trump was everything but weak with Iran. This is where we stand today. This is where Iran stands today. The blockade on Hormuz Strait, and allow me to make a correction here. The accurate name is Khalid Strait. Khalid is the Islamic army general who killed Hormuz. And this is, mostly Arab countries region in the so-called Persian Gulf. So we call it Khalid Strait. So that corrected. So Hormuz Strait is an Iranian, actually Iranian nationalistic name, which is, we're not fueling their ego at this point. That said, the American blockade on Hormuz Strait, Khalid Strait, is costing Iran a total of $1 billion a day, more than up to $300 million in sales of oil and gas, and more than accumulative siege damage, economic damage caused by American blockade, which far goes beyond $1 billion a day. So this is a country where the average income per capita is at best $4,500. That's at best. The price of basic food items in Iran today are skyrocketing beyond what you can see at your local friendly Target or Walmart. An egg, which used to cost 3 cents, now costs half a dollar in a country where people make at best $600 a month. People cannot find basic food items. This month, for the first time since the creation or the inception of the terrorist group Iranian Revolutionary Guards, for the first time, Iran couldn't pay their full salaries. They gave them a percentage of their salaries. Iran is losing money. Iran is bleeding to death. Iran is being starved. And on top of it, the way that oil wells produce is pretty much like a can of Coca-Cola. Imagine, you open a can of Coca-Cola, you can't shut it back. And if you shut it back, it's not going to be like you really wanted it to be. You can't put tube back into the toothpaste back into the tube. This is exactly how oil wells produce. They must be running all the time. Otherwise, if you stop the production or halt the production, you will have irreparable damage. And at best, if you can ask any expert, at best, if you shut down an oil well for a long time, months, sometimes even weeks, the damage is irreparable in the sense that you need to rebuild the infrastructure, and even then, you can't get it back at 100%. The Iranian oil production is suffering from a huge amount of damage to its structure, to the point where the average damage per week is in excess of $500 million of maintenance. Iran is bleeding. Iran is in a bad shape. And meanwhile, while Trump have him, in a chokehold in the Strait of Hormuz, Khalid, he simply, all he has to do is negotiate. What if Trump negotiates for another year, another 6 years? Could Iran fuel terrorist attacks like it used to all across Europe? Could they finance and organize terror attacks in Israel like they used to? Could they aid Hamas like they used to? Could they support Arab monarchies and regimes who align with them, like either the Sultanate of Oman, the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, Sisi of Egypt? They cannot do that. Iran is in incredibly bad shape, and it's not costing American taxpayers a dollar. If you drop an MK bomb, smart bomb, or even a dumb bomb from an F-16, the average cost, like in a good day, that's $1 million. And that's to knock down one building, sometimes even kill one individual. Trump is not doing that. Trump is a businessman. He appreciates the value of a dollar. He appreciates the value of his country's countrymen and countrywomen, not dying for nonsense like what took place in Iraq. So both the Israelis and the Americans are doing a number on the Iranians, humiliating them whenever they forgot, whenever they push for the talks. And there has been a very aggressive approach, just that you know. Example of that is the Iranians requested that they will never have a ceasefire unless they include Hezbollah and Lebanon. So you want to ceasefire with Iran, quote unquote, you got to stop cracking down on Hezbollah. What happened? The minute they opened their mouth with that, the Israelis went and turned Hezbollah into shish kebab. Right now, Hezbollah is messed up. Hezbollah, they've lost most of their high to mid-level commanders. Hezbollah has no access to its main source of income, which is drug trade. This is what the Israelis are not going to tell you. The fact, that they've been raiding places in southern Lebanon. One of the key places they've raided is the cocaine labs, the drug farms, the weed farms, and Hezbollah is one of the largest weed and drug, sophisticated and methamphetamine exports, and especially coke to Europe and partially the Middle East. So this is their main Hezbollah is like a cartel, a drug cartel, a main source of income. And there's a huge discussion about how drugs finance terrorism. But now they cannot do their trade. They have no longer a grip on the Lebanese government. They are being embattled, and they both, Hezbollah and Iranians, are bleeding to death. So when someone like John Bolton wants to show and another stupid war like he did, and he aided Bush W in Iraq, it's not going to happen. You guys can cry every night. The warmongers, you can cry every night before you go to sleep. You're not getting your war. You're not getting your World War III. Not in Ukraine, not in Iran. Trump is going to finish the job. The U.S. military is going to finish the job without risking too much. And at the same time, most people have not heard of the recent integration between the Israeli army and the American army. This has been the case with Israel a long time ago, and I want people to listen. Some of my countrymen, like Palestinians, Jordanians, Arabs, and the others, they wonder why the U.S. support Israel so much. There's theory about I have to laugh here. Theory about how influential Jews, the Jewish conspiracy, how the Jews control the United States. Well, I'll tell people this much, and I always say that, and I laugh. Jews cannot keep a synagogue under control. They can't, much less control the United States, and much less control the world. I would trust this claim, conspiracy theory, only when I see a Jewish synagogue that's not, full of mishogas and infighting. Jews cannot do that. They're not designed. Their DNA is not into controlling the world. Doesn't happen. That said, they support Israel because it's always been either that you spend $8 trillion for a war in Iraq, or they get the Israelis to do it for only $4 million. How much does an air carrier cost? How much does a destroyer cost? Or a strike group? How much a strike group costs to move from one place to another? And lately, something very significant happened. It's not only that the Israelis have become officially integrating the army with the United States system and all. There's also the fact that, and maybe this is a first for many people, the Americans were mainly since 1981 dependent on Jordan. This is why Jordan got all that special treatment because they've been since 1981 dependent on Jordan for using the airfield, airspace, and now they've moved all of their air assets and most of their soldiers into Israel. So now it's public that Israel is America's very advanced and cheap post protecting American interest. That said, and I'm sorry, I'll wait for your next question, but this is where we're going. Iran is losing badly. The days when Iran can bully everyone around in the Middle East are over. People who want to war to get the United States sunk into another Vietnam in this region, it's not going to happen. And on top of it, Iran now is negotiating. You keep hearing things like, President Trump saying that we've got the talks progressing with Iran, and then you hear of another strike. This is how the Middle East operates. In order to remind the other person who they are, you need to, knock them down, and kick them down every once in a while. Sorry, this is how a tough, crazy neighborhood operates. Keep in mind, there's also a history of things the way it's been happening. Iran has been the sweetheart of the West, the sweetheart of the Western intelligence establishment for 45 years now, more than 45 years. Iran, and listen carefully to what I'm telling you guys, Iran was incepted by Western intelligence agencies, mainly the Carter administration. They put Khomeini in power. They thought that we would need an Islamist who is much better than having a communist over there. So they pushed Khomeini in power. All was top-notch CIA operation because they didn't want a communist running the country. And on the same hand, when Bush Senior, Daddy Bush, was the vice president who was mainly, to a great extent, actually running the White House at the time, all those Reagan years and 4 years of Bush Senior, he also aided Iran because Iran was an excellent bully in the region. And the peak, the climax of Iran power came when Bush W came over. He handed them Iraq. I was working for the Department of State then in both Iraq and Jordan, and I'm an eyewitness into how Iran was fully empowered by the administration into taking over Iraq and all of its treasure. This is finished. The old system is gone. Iran is losing, and we all gonna get liberated of this noshkai stupidity that's taken the region over for 50 years.
One question that I have is that when Israel responds, Trump gets upset with Bibi, tells him to de-escalate, but he himself responds to Iran with escalation. What kind of game is Trump playing?
Good cop, bad cop. Simple. That's it. They listen, there might be a difference of operations, but both men agree that they want the Islamist apparatus, not Islamic. I'm a Muslim. I'm a practicing Muslim. They want the radical Islamic apparatus killed in the region. I've spoken about that in television a year ago, and many people didn't believe me. They want the Iran Revolutionary Guard gone. They want the Muslim Brotherhood gone. They want the Hezbollah gone. Houthis in Yemen gone. They want also Hamas gone completely. These are establishments that have been propped up, pampered, and even created by the West decades ago. And now it's time for them to go. And guess who's next now? Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan, because they are the biggest and the most influential brotherhood group in the world. And they're coming for them. Trump is coming for them. Let the Iran issue cool off. And there's, a good checklist for Trump. One is getting rid of Iran's power. Doesn't mean you have to occupy Iran. Doesn't mean you have to change the regime. You need to cut Iran's nails and fangs. That's what you need to do. Two is ending the Islamist radical groups, which is he's been working on since the designation of the Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood as a terror group, plus the Lebanese and the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. Very great move. And on top of it, the third thing is the biggest problem, the elephant in the room, which is the Israeli-Arab conflict, which is one of the most artificial and stupid conflicts in history. And that's going to be done away with. And you will be surprised, a conflict that's lasted since early 20s, how quickly it's going to disappear once they get to it and sit on the table.
If you were sitting with President Trump right now, you were his advisor, what would you tell him that he's doing correctly, and what would you tell him to improve on? Is there anything that he can listen to do differently?
Well, the first thing is I would tell him that the way his administration, his Secretary of War, his Vice President, an excellent negotiator, regardless of certain things he might say or not say. Okay, those people and the American servicemen and women, they've been doing a marvelous job. And the thing is, I would, hail President Trump for respecting and appreciating the value of U.S. blood and treasure. He's not wasting U.S. assets mindlessly like his predecessors did. On the other hand, I would tell President Trump that all roads lead to Jordan. The situation in Jordan, I think the president and the Secretary Rubio already know that Jordan is the source. The Hashemite regime in Jordan is actually the main mentor of the Muslim Brotherhood in the world. The HQ, global HQ of the Muslim Brotherhood international organization, which is the largest Muslim Brotherhood group in the world, which is like the full fraternity of the Muslim Brotherhood, is in Amman, Jordan, just exactly less than 3 miles from the king's own mansion. And we I've covered that a lot in my writings, including some academic work about it. The Hashemite regime in Jordan is joined by the hip to the Muslim Brotherhood. This translates into the fact that the Muslim Brotherhood controls all the major operations in the world when it comes to terrorism in the Muslim Brotherhood, and this includes the following. Jordan's Muslim Brotherhood controls Hamas. This is what President Trump should deal with. Fixes the following problem. Jordan Muslim Brotherhood was and remains, and I can spend hours talking about that, connected to ISIS. In fact, the Jordanian intelligence was caught red-handed by major mainstream media selling weapons to ISIS and selling Toyota trucks, in addition to selling ammunition they stole from the Britons and from the Americans. You can look that up on any major news network or newspaper. The Jordanians are also the reason the Palestinians do not have a country. There's a great discussion about the Palestinians. There's people who want to say, oh, Palestinians don't exist. Well, that's silly because Qataris and Kuwaitis and the United Arab Emirates and most of these countries are the creative mindsets of colonial office Britain 100 years ago. So the nationality per se, Kuwaiti, Palestinian, Jordanian, even Lebanese didn't exist not too long ago. So Palestinians do exist as self-identifying nations, just like the Lebanese and others. The only problem is Palestinians do already have a country. That country is mainly Jordan. Squeaks like a duck, walks like a duck. 95% of the 95% documented. You can look up my well-documented video about it. How many Palestinians are in Jordan? 95% of populations are Palestinians. Everything is Palestinian. Traditional cuisine is Palestinian. Everything is Palestinian. The only thing that's not Palestinian is the king. What the king needs to do, or what Trump could push him to do, ask him legibly to do, is to recognize the Palestinian majority of Jordan, recognize the demographic majority, recognize that Jordan's identity is Palestinian. There is a unique identity for Palestinians, which is mostly driven by Jewish heritage. I'm not going to get you into a completely different discussion, but Palestinians are ethnically, at least the samples done by the University of Hadassah, 82% were Palestinians were from pure Jewish heritage, pure Jewish DNA. I've got family members who did the DNA and we were shocked by the outcome. So there's the uniqueness of Palestinians' traditions, food, even religious rituals relate back to Jews. This was a Jewish majority country until 120, 150 years ago, when the Ottomans began forcing convergence in fear that they would lose the land. They would lose Islam's third holiest land. That said, Palestinians deserve a country, and they already have one. The only one who refuses to recognize it is the King of Jordan. How does he do so? What happens if President Trump pushes the king and the administration in Jordan to recognize Jordan's Palestinian majority? One, the right of return would be no longer a problem. We have Palestinians in Lebanon. Forget about Palestinians in Jordan. Palestinians in Lebanon, Palestinians in Syria, Palestinians in Brazil, of all places. Argentina has a huge number of Palestinians. They're all claiming they need to go home. Those people, once Jordan only applies its own Citizenship Act of 1954, Article number 2, all Palestinians, as long as they're not Jewish, that's what the law says, are Jordanians. So they have people in Lebanon living in refugee camps could return to Amman. They don't want to stay in refugee camps in the middle of nowhere. Some of them even in Iraq at the borders, denied entry. That's number one. Number two, when Palestinians want to travel from the West Bank, they have to get humiliated at the borders of Jordan. They would keep him in the middle of, very unsanitary places, waiting at the borders for 6, 7, 12, 24, 48 hours just to cross the borders. People who want to travel would not travel to Jordan because the regime of Jordan makes it difficult for them to travel. So the West Bank is under siege. The actual siege comes from Jordan, not from Israel. Even if even if the peace vision included that they need there needs to be a Palestinian state in across the river, west of the river, anywhere in Israel territory, like Judea and Samaria, West Bank, even Area A, Area B, Area C. Usually, my understanding is they're going to focus on Area A, where 95% of Palestinians live, which is a very small chunk of the West Bank. So even if you give them some sort of autonomy in that, they still would need an access out to the outside world. It's either going to be Israel or Jordan. If it becomes Israel, even if this is a friendly, lovely state in Palestine, they're still going to become a burden on the Jewish state. And Palestinians, my people, love to produce children more than any other Arab nation. So give it 20 years and they're going to be a real issue for Israel. Right now, Judea and Samaria does cost the Israelis electricity. Palestinians do not pay for electricity, just that you know. It's usually the Israeli army who picks the tab. They pay something, part of it. It's expensive for the Israelis to maintain the Palestinian Authority. So we need a place of an exit for the Palestinians, which could be economically, geographically, demographically, and politically. Jordan, only Jordan. And the third thing that a change in Jordan would fix is the Temple Mount, Al-Aqsa Mosque. The problems in the Temple Mount, and I've documented this. I went into the Temple Mount, into the Al-Aqsa Mosque, sorry, not the Temple Mount, not the Western Wall, but the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and I did my prayers. And I went there and I was recording the people I interviewed. The video, I have it. And I think for some reason, YouTube is limiting it for some reason. That video should have gone viral. I've spoken to people and showed you how the Jordanian authorities controlling Al-Aqsa Mosque are the main problem. One of it is, I'll give you a problem, and I want people to listen carefully to this. You keep hearing of trouble in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Trouble in the Al-Aqsa Mosque is fully controlled by the Waqf. The Waqf is controlled by Jordan. When you enter the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Daniel, you go to Al-Aqsa Mosque. The first thing to your right, you'll find people, sitting, usually women, sitting doing nothing, not praying. They wear their hijab and they're sitting, usually in excess of 100 to 150 women. Those women are called al-murabitat. They're garrisoned women. They sit there, they do nothing. Then they get a message from Al-Waqf guards. They tell them, you see, today, any non-Muslims you see in the Waqf, attack them. And then Al Jazeera would come in. They would say, Jew settlers are storming Al-Aqsa Mosque and performing Talmudic prayers. They would attack. So Jordan uses these women, who are my friend in the Israeli intelligence, internal intelligence, confirmed to me what I already knew, that they're all connected to the Jordanian intelligence. They attack anyone to cause a fuss at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and the king would come out and say, I am the protector of Al-Aqsa Mosque. Jordan is a part of the problem. What we need, and this is the vision that I understand Israel supports, and this is the vision I understand some Arab Gulf states support, is a local body controlling Al-Aqsa Mosque. Why is a foreign king controlling a mosque or a holy site that doesn't belong to him by any means? You have more connection, you as a Jew, have more connection to Al-Aqsa Mosque itself, let alone the Temple Mount, let alone the Dome of the Rock or the holiest of holies. You have way more heart of blood connection to that place than the king. So why are you banned from even praying in that place? And I keep repeating this. I am a practicing Muslim. I know my religion well. I've studied my religion well. Muhammad allowed the Christians of Najran, southern Saudi Arabia, when they visited him, he allowed them to perform prayers in Islam's second holiest site. Why are we preventing Jews, our monotheist brothers, the brothers and sisters who we worship the same God. It's in the Quran. It says the God of the children of Israel. Why are we denying them the right to worship? In the Quran, it says those who prevent people from worship are God's own enemies, Hashem's own enemies. So why are we creating apartheid in a place that should bring us together, not set us apart? That said, the problem is in Jordan. So we will fix the right of return. We will fix the refugee problems, the statehood problems, economic and demographic problems, plus Al-Aqsa Mosque Temple Mount problems, just by forcing Jordan to change. I really, really been doing the rounds in Washington, talking to the right people, and I understand they are smart and they've been listening. I expect some very positive change at the time of this administration.
Now, you spoke about the Palestinian people. Like, bottom line, who do you think has done the most damage to the Palestinians? Is it Israel? Is it Hamas, the Palestinian leadership, the Arab governments? I know the Western media would say Israel, but the truth is what?
Okay, I need a little more time. You're very generous with your time, but I need a little more time answering this than usual. One, the biggest damage, biggest damage to the Palestinian people have come from the Hashemite regime. One, the Hashemite regime stole the government, the British government of Palestine treasury. They stole it and turned it into money. They've stolen our aid, our welfare. We could have been a part of Israel in 1948, and most Palestinians would have loved to become Israelis and live the good life. They occupied, and after they occupied, looking at the papers of the Arab army's commander, Arab Jordanian army commander, the British man called Glob Pasha, looking at his papers at St. Anthony's College at Oxford University, I saw letters from locals begging him to relieve them of the humiliation and attacks and forced slavery done by the Jordanian army against him. Let me remind you of the place. The place is called Tubas near Nablus, near Shechem. The document, I still have a copy of it, where they begged the English commander to relieve them of the humiliation and occupation of the Arab Jordanian army. Up until today, our biggest problem, the Hashemite regime wants us to keep fighting. They stole 98% of the British mandate for Palestine. They've stolen our wealth. Jordan, since 1948, taxation without representation. We are 95% of the population. We get 9 seats at the parliament of 120. In Jordan, in Israel, the Arabs are a mere 17% of the population. They get 10 seats in 120-seat Knesset. There's not a single mayor in Jordan who's Palestinian. Not a single police officer. Not a single army commander. Not a single pilot or fighter pilot. Not a single university president, ambassador. We live in the worst apartheid state in modern today. And the problem in Al-Aqsa is because of Jordan. Who created Hamas? Hamas was incepted by Vice President George Bush Sr. in 1987, and Jordan, and I have enough documentation for that, created Hamas. Jordan made sure that Hamas was created through the Jordanian intelligence. Who controls Hamas today? Hamas is the Palestine chapter of the Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood. This is official hierarchy. Quote unquote, Palestine chapter of the Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood. And I have documented evidence for that. Who controls the Jordanian Muslim Brotherhood? The leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood. Who controls the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood? The King of Jordan. You don't need to believe him. You need to just listen to his own statements. His father said, quote unquote, his late father, Hussein, said, the Muslim Brotherhood are the Hashemite regime's own political party. And Abdullah, in his interview in the Atlantic magazine in 2013, he said, I only disagree with them at 10%, and they only disagree with me at 10%. He puts in the parliament. He still denies and refuses to ban the Muslim Brotherhood. He even allows him, when he would put people like me in jail and sentences me to life in prison, he would put those people protesting across the street and chanting death to America, death to Israel. The evidence is overwhelming. It's documented. Nobody is more dangerous to Palestinians than the Hashemite regime. And let me quote a man I'm not exactly in love with, Yasser Arafat. Yasser Arafat said, Israel fights with me over land. while King Hussein fights with me over land and human. They want us as slaves. I'll put it to you in this way. Get me the most radical Israelis who really hates Arabs. There are radical Israelis. They're radicals everywhere. Get me the absolute Meshoga, who, really crazy. They want the land. So if say Arabs disappear tomorrow, and I'm talking about a very, very deranged person. If Arabs disappear tomorrow for an Israeli, they don't care. Fine, they're gone. In Jordan, the Hashemite regime wants to control us. The Hashemite regime refuses a settlement for the Palestinians. The Hashemite regime denies foreign and Arab grants to rebuild Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan. They would deny Palestinians in Jordan the right to travel to the West. If you want to travel to the West, the Jordanian intelligence can stop you for no reason and take away your passport. They've been denying people who want to go to the West and start a new life. They've been stopping them, haunting them, because the Hashemite regime feeds on our suffering. This is how most Arab regimes want the Arab-Israeli conflict to continue for as long as possible, because they've done so well. And in the case of the Hashemite regime of Jordan, the Palestinian and Israeli suffering has been the bread and butter. For the first time, all the time actually, the Palestinians and Israelis, they have one mutual enemy, which is the Hashemite regime. And don't let me get started with how much the Jordanian intelligence has been playing across Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. Ask any Israeli security person worth their salt. If they deny this, then they're not a security person. And by the way, there's a lot of people who claim to be affiliated with the security apparatus in Israel, and they don't. They don't have any connections. And I've known some names. The terror attacks that's taken place since 1987 have been aided, abetted, and even controlled at one point by the Jordanian intelligence department. The fast forward to today, the hottest spot in the West Bank or the Judea area with the largest number of troubles, the largest amount of trouble are Jenin camp. Jenin camp is like a Jordanian intelligence dump. They control it. They pay 1,800 shekels for young men. They smuggle weapons. Google how many times were Jordanian officials, including Jordanian diplomats, caught smuggling weapons into the West Bank. One of them is the king's personal friend, Mr. Al-Udwan, who was a parliament member affiliated with the Jordanian intelligence. He was caught with a huge weapon cache and gold being smuggled. Just Google that, look that up. And the king himself struggled to get him released from Israel, which was, in my opinion, a huge mistake. He got released. That said, the Jordanians also control, and this is, what people in the Israeli army itself, some actually, I wouldn't say the ranking, but the very senior ranking commander, the Israeli army in the West Bank, when I was in Israel the last time, I sat with him and he told me, we know the Jordanians control this and this and that. We know that. It's public knowledge. They control also the Jenin refugee camp. Jordanian intelligence control Mukhayyam Balata, which is near Shechem, which is one of the most hostile spots, and they control the worst of all, which is Tol Karam refugee camp, which is near the Naba. And guess who comes from the Naba and Tol Karam refugee camp? Guess who's a native? Queen Rania of Jordan. And I bet you've watched Queen Rania of Jordan trashing Jews and using the most anti-Semitic statements against Jews 5 times on national television right after the 7th of October attack began. And there's something very interesting here. It's a very strange coincidence. On the eve of the massacres, the 7th of October, on the 6th of October, Rania delivered a speech in front of some youth conference in Ireland. It was all about youth and future. And Rania is talking how the Israelis are massacring Palestinian young men, left and right. So, this is a woman who's got the Jordanian intelligence apparatus under her feet. What did she know that we didn't know? She was talking already about massacres the night before the massacres began. So the rabbit hole is deeper than you think. The idiot and the fakakta analysts, and this is not the F word. Please look it up for those who don't speak Yiddish. The fakakta analysts who keep telling you that the king of Jordan is the best thing that's ever happened to the Israelis. They didn't know jack. And let me quote what an Israeli general, who is a rabbi, told me last June, a year ago. I met him somewhere in Europe. We're going to a conference, and he was an Israeli general who happens also to be a practicing rabbi in the army. He told me the IDF identifies the Jordanian borders as the most dangerous borders Israel facing at the time. Not because they're long, because the establishment there is hostile, the army is hostile, the Jordanian intelligence department is hostile from head to toe, and most people have no clue. You bring a so-called expert down to you. No, we are, we are friends with Jordan, and Jordan protects the border. No, no, no. Jordan doesn't protect the borders, and this is why Netanyahu has recently, just 10 days ago, or 2 weeks ago, commissioned a whole brigade right at the borders, and he openly said, we expect to operate in defense across, I repeat, across the Jordanian borders using Jordanian territory. It's not calm on the Eastern Front. It's the calm before the storm, and most of it is being kept under lock and key. You will hear more about it. It could be today, it could be in 2 years, but it's coming.
You mentioned that you were placed in prison, right? Is that what you said?
No, I was sentenced in 2014. I was sentenced to life in prison for quote unquote having, and I'm quoting here, having a long tongue against the king, seeking to change the society structure, bad mouthing official entities, and writing for Israeli newspapers.
And what ended up happening after that?
Thank God I was in the safety of the United Kingdom, so they didn't get me. But trust me, they've tried, and many people like me who support peace and support Israel ended up in the same position in Jordan, and this is very strange. The king meets openly and acknowledges that he meets regularly with the following. He meets with Muslim Brotherhood leaders. He meets with Hamas leaders. He meets with them openly. Why? Why does he go after people like me if he is so peaceful? So I think the answer is very clear. He's not peaceful at all. And this is where you guys should read what's really there is, perspective versus perception. Most Arab regimes, most are pro-Islamists, pro-Hamas, against an end to the Arab-Israeli conflict. Most of them have done very well under the status quo. You're convincing them to change it. So they give you lip service, and at the end, they do only what they want to do, which is exactly what Jordan's doing, which is exactly what Egypt has been doing, and a few.
I wanted to ask you, if Hamas disappeared tomorrow, who would govern Gaza? And if Gazans could vote again, would you think they would vote for Hamas once again after all of this?
Okay, let me be clear. Palestinians voted for Hamas in, I think, was it 2005? Voted for
2006, yeah.
Hamas, landslide victory. Even Christian Palestinians, and I know some of them who was working for a Western government in Ramallah, Western government consulate, voted. She and her husband voted for Hamas. The reason people voted for Hamas are twofold. One, they thought that they can get rid of the Jews. So we know the doctrine. We used to think that the minute we get rid of Jews or massacre them, iPhones are going to throw on trees in our backyards. So all we need to do is kill the Jews, and everything's going to go just perfect. So guess what? Hamas couldn't kill the Jews, and the Jews grew stronger very quickly. Number two, people thought that it's like the remedy to get rid of the corruption of the Palestinian Authority. People were very happy before the Palestinian Authority came along. The Palestinian Authority is the monkey in the middle. They provided no services. The services we used to get for free from Israel, or like discounted prices, like phone prices, telephone service, internet. All the Palestinian Authority did is they sat in the middle and they started charging extra. So they take internet from Israel, they charge Palestinians triple the price, and they just pay to Israel what the Palestinians could have paid in the first hand. So they are a problem. People thought they're going to get rid of the Palestinian Authority. Not only Israel, getting rid of the Jews, killing the Jews, and what have you, and also getting rid of the Palestinian Authority. Well, guess what? Hamas turned out to be worse than the Palestinian Authority, and this is where we have three mindsets for Palestinians. Palestinians in Gaza, I swear to Almighty Hashem, and I've been speaking to them since 2014. They have names, phone numbers. I've published a full article, a lengthy documented article of how they were against Hamas in 2014, and somehow it disappeared from the internet was after it was like a hit, best most read article disappeared from the internet. That's it. This is where we stand. They hate Hamas with a passion. I repeat, Palestinians in Gaza will hate Hamas with a passion, and there are countless examples of Palestinian people killing Hamas members today. Every day a Hamas member gets killed or assassinated by local Palestinians. I can show you video. I can show you a video of one of the anti-Hamas militias leaders. He caught a Hamas commander in the tunnel. They pulled him out of the tunnel. And he's telling him on camera, we are going to do the Inquisition style on you. And he was asking him, are you going to execute me? He said, well, much worse. People hate Hamas in Gaza because you don't believe what Hamas done to them over the past 20 years. Forget about the wars, humiliations, assaults, torture. It was like the Iranian regime. On the other hand, Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, if there were elections today, they would vote twice to elect Hamas. Palestinians in Judea and Samaria these are my people. My relatives are in Judea and Samaria. My relatives are in Kalandia refugee camp, in Dheisheh refugee camp, in Bethlehem. These are my people. But I'm telling you the way it is, the good, the bad, and the ugly. They would happily kill your child and feed him to you if they could. So we're dealing with a very heavily radicalized population. We need much better control. It's the only reason Israel still tolerates the Palestinian Authority, is that they're keeping them under control. Palestinians in Jordan, all I can tell you is the Hashemite regime and the Hashemite media apparatus have been calling on Jordanian, usually Jordan has been 95% Palestinians, to join protests for Gaza. The biggest number they were able to bring turnout rate, 1,000 people out of 11.3 million Palestinians in Jordan. That tells you exactly where the heart is because they've seen the enemy. The enemy is the Hashemite regime. I'll give you one example to understand how the psychology operates. Have you ever heard of an Israeli politician or an Israeli or a Zionist anywhere going live on television and claiming that Palestinian women are hoes? For Arab mindset, personal honor, especially if a woman, is like the top thing you can own. You would die for it. You would kill for it. And it would be worth it. In Jordan, every day, people with their known names, known who they are, in Jordan, which is a dictatorship where you cannot open your mouth without a haksha. I don't know if there's another word for haksha, without the kosher seal from the government. You can't do that. This is like North Korea. You can't open your mouth unless you're authorized. They're insulting Palestinians every single day to the point where they associated the word Palestinian woman with the word whore. Have Israelis ever done that? After that, this is where I matter. This is why Mudar Zahran is the person the Hashemite kingdom fears. Because I'm the only person to speak openly what every Palestinian in Jordan thinks behind closed doors. It's not going to be easy, but change in Jordan will only, whatever the form it's going to come up with, it's going to establish the recognition of the demographic majority of Palestinians in Jordan, and Jordan as the de facto and soon de jure Palestinian state. And allow me to say this, we're not talking about creating democracies here. We've seen how that goes. We need to re-educate our people, impose laws against terrorism and radicalism, and against ethnic hatred and incitement. Give it 20, 30 years, then we can start introducing democracy. It will be a benevolent, authoritarian regime, which will be very close to Israel. This is not a thought. You watch this interview very well. Guys, for those who's listening, keep it so you can refer to it a couple years from now, a year from now, or even 6 months from now. And mark my words.
I want to ask you a last question. You gave a speech at Oxford years ago, a very strong, viral speech. Since then, something has happened to Oxford. They become increasingly more and more anti-Israel. They recently had a discussion of Who is a bigger threat to global peace? Is it the Islamic Republic of Iran or Israel? And they voted that it's Israel that is a bigger threat to peace around the world. Overwhelming vote. What has happened to Oxford and what has happened to these high institutions in the West?
Anything you see being promoted or becoming a trend, anyone who looks at something that's becoming an in thing, trendy, if you have anyone assuming that this is happening by coincidence, would be silly. Follow the money. You will see the Qatari money, other Arab governments' money, and you would know where all of this has come from. None of this is done for free. Look at the all those movements taking place and claiming to support Palestine, which I know they don't, because I've tried speaking to all of them about the Palestinian majority in Jordan suffering. None of them cares, not even in Lebanon, not only in Israel, only when Israel is involved. People think it's only anti-Semitism. Anyone thinks it's only anti-Semitism is also not exactly understanding what's going on. This is not about anti-Semitism. This is about not only anti-Semitism, this is also about keeping the status quo. Please understand, the Middle East, the Arab-Israeli conflict is the Western globalism cockpit for war and unrest across the world. If this stops, if suddenly Israelis and Palestinians become hippies and have the time of their lives, they're not going to be able to do it. They're not going to be able to charge incredible insurance rate on ships carrying oil. They won't be able to sell weapons. They won't be able to hire their services to combat terrorism, which they've created. So it's the oldest trick in the book. It's been ongoing for the past 100 years. You create a conflict, then you manage it. I'll give you a recent example. Ukraine. They created the conflict, and then they are now trying to manage it. And Trump is saying, no, I'm not giving any more money. I'm forcing a peace. I'm not going to tolerate billions and billions of dollars thrown and burnt into this. So it's the oldest trick in the book. And this is where, a lot of Jews miss the idea. One very intelligent woman came to see me in London. She has this whole production company. And she saw me. I'm a member of my political team. And she goes, well, there's a lot of, people that are still supporting Israel. I was like, people what? Like governments what? She goes, support Israel. I told nobody supports Israel. Israel is convenient to them. Israel is serving their own agenda. And as long as Israel does, they're fine with it. But Israel now is not serving their own agenda. Israel is taking over land it should have taken a long time ago, at least planning to do so. Israel is fighting enemies it has tolerated long time ago. An example of this is what happened in Hamas. You realize, that many Arab governments involved with Hamas, they thought that it would be another war where, Israel goes in, then has another truce for a year or two. They never thought Israel would finish the job and go all the way. Right now, and this is news for some people, Hamas is literally at least 90% finished. At least 90% finished. The only reason it still exists in certain pockets is because the Americans and the Israelis do not want to go all the way. Besides, they're controlled. They don't have, they'll be dealt with. But Hamas could no longer put up a fight like it used to, ever. So they didn't want that. They would tolerate Israel only if Israel keeps Hamas and now they're going after Hezbollah. They want the saga to continue. Israel was not exactly free to operate like it wanted to over the past 80 years. Things have changed in the past 5 years only. And I think good times are ahead. And I think, my grandchild will not be fighting yours. In fact, inshallah, Be'ezrat Hashem, I will see my people could reconnect to their roots. I'm a Muslim. I want them to stay Muslims, but it would be wonderful if they acknowledge their Jewish heritage.
Mudar, I greatly appreciate your time and your insights as always. Thank you very much. And I hope that we can speak again soon, as you said, with peace in the world, not just in the Middle East. Thank you again.
Bi'amrillah, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will see this. And someday, soon, in our lifetime, Jerusalem will symbolize love and unity across the world. This is what it's all about. Laila Tov, Salamu
Laila
alaikum, Shalom.